Hello, everybody, and we are back inside the pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and we have an unbelievable show tonight. Yes, my voice is working okay. It usually does. Every now and then, if it does get grassy, it's because it does a lot of things like work overtime. Don't worry, Dr. K, I'm still okay for now. But anyway, what a great crew I have lined up for. First of all, before I bring Jennifer Lewis, who's a new member of our crew, Mel Farr Jr., welcome back. Hope you're resting. In the background, glad to have you, and looking forward to a great season with you, Mel, on Inside the Pigskin.
Hey, great to be back. Looking forward to it.
You have a great year. Mel and I go back quite a few years. And every opportunity we get to come on, we do an awful lot of good things together, and we're excited for 2022. Mel, like I said, glad to have you back. Hey, Steve Ballesteri, the man who I drag in every single project on the planet from patfans.com. Welcome back, SB.
Hey, it's good to be back. It's been kind of a rough summer, but things are starting to level out. So now we're trying to get back on an even keel and can't wait for football season to start.
Well, like I said, anybody that cracks our club's got to be pretty good. And the young lady that happened to crack that club, her name is Jennifer Lewis, a professional fan. Jennifer Lewis, my goodness,
Hi.
welcome to the big show.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
So, all right, Jennifer, we got to do this thing the right way. So, why don't you let everybody know what show you got going on and everything that you're involved with, Jen?
Sure. So my baby is Three Chicks in a Pod. We're on Tuesday nights, and we are part of the Sideline Sports Network. I'm also NBA Carousel on Monday night during the season. Also on Tuesday night, we have the best late night Cubs show. It's Confidential, hosted by JB Ellis. And then Wednesday nights, we have the Pundit's Pundit with Mr. Jacob Christner. And I'm going to kidnap your grandchild, Mr. Farr, because he's too cute. Good thing I don't know where you live.
Hey, say hi.
Hi. And then we also have the NFL Carousel, which will be kicking off in the next 2 weeks. It's Alex Lemine's NFL Carousel, and I am the Carolina Panthers rep on there. So I've just got, and then a couple other things in the pipeline, but everybody check out, especially Three Chicks in a Pod. That's my baby. It's on Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
And good old Jennifer had the opportunity to work with Candy Ebling on Cubs Confidential Ninja the other night, and we're looking forward to seeing Jennifer and Candy team up, do some pretty good things, not getting her ahead of herself, but you had a pretty good first act on the Cubs show, didn't you?
She did. So much so, Candy will be on my show, Three Chicks in a Pod, on Tuesday night as well, this coming. So definitely check it out for all you Candy fans.
There you go. Don't worry. She's as cool, calm, and collective. And she's definitely hoping the Brewers beat the Cubs so she doesn't end up eating humble pie. I know she got you in round one, didn't she?
That debate was difficult for me because the Cubs have no shot in making the playoffs. But, I got to defend my Cubs. So.
Okay, well, you did it right up about an hour away, Milwaukee to the north side. So, folks, let me set the show for you. This entire broadcast is going to be centered around Deshaun Watson. By now, I think everybody knows about the season that he's had. So I'll go to everything that we have here that's transpired, and everybody will get an opportunity to comment it. And we're going to get it rolling now. So, all right, one of the things I want to talk about is double jeopardy, because we're talking about predatory behavior. Judge Sue L. Robinson characterized that situation with Deshaun Watson, and the initial punishment was 6 games. I personally think it should have been 1 year or 2 years, at least 1 year for sure, and 2 years along the lines of Trevor Bauer-like. But the NFL compromised and got the best deal that they could. I really truly felt that Roger Goodell was in a tricky situation, because now he's no longer judge, jury, and executioner. And he wanted to avoid a lawsuit by the NFLPA and didn't want to drag it out. So as it turns out, the final punishment turned out to be Deshaun Watson's going to miss a total of 11 games. He's going to be paying a $5 million fine, as well as $600,000 out of his pocket. So, all right, Jennifer, tell me what you think about the penalties. What do you think?
I think if Calvin Ridley is suspended for a year for playing Sports Kings, then, we got an issue. My question is, and I asked you this earlier, did Deshaun actually physically accost a woman? Or did he proposition them? It's still sketchy, still sleazy, but he wouldn't obviously be the first person to do that, Robert Kraft. But sorry, Steve.
Not at all.
But I mean, so that's my question. And I'm a Panthers fan. Obviously, we have our list of naughty players as well. But what surprised me and why I defended Deshaun Watson until about a month ago was because none of these allegations came out until 3 weeks after he requested a trade from the Texans. And McNair isn't known for being the most pleasant of all people, and may not see things in the vision that one living in 2022 should see things in. And so that's why I questioned a lot of it. I felt like it was a setup by McNair initially. I truly did, because the Texans paid for these women to fly out. They paid for the massages. They paid for everything. So that's why I questioned it all. And because having known of Deshaun Watson, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. He went to Clemson. That's 3 hours away. I promise you, I would have heard rumblings. I never heard anything bad about him at all. Going back in his history, nothing bad in high school, junior high school, nothing. Just a grade A guy. So what flipped? Like, the first thing he did when he got his contract was bought his mom a house and a Jag. I mean, people who respect their parents, their mothers that much, typically don't do that. So my question is, did he actually accost someone, or did he just proposition all of them? And say, oh, that feels so good when you're getting a massage. I mean, I've heard women say that. That being said, when his attorney said everyone gets a happy ending, that flipped it for me. And then Deshaun, get a new attorney. Just saying. So why have your attorney admit that? But no, the punishment is not long enough, in my opinion. Because especially if he did accost someone, because you look at your Greg Hardys, you look at Thomas Davis, who got suspended for 6 games because he took a supplement he had been taking for 18 years at that point that was banned the day before his drug test. That's not a fair punishment. And you're going to say TD and Deshaun Watson are on the same level of naughty? No, sir. No, not cool. Not cool at all. No. So I was happier that they got 11 games. I'm happy that he has the largest fine in NFL history at this point. I'm happy that it's going to Foundations. I'm impressed that when he got signed to the Browns, the rape crisis centers had an 800% uptick in donations. All amazing things. And if Deshaun is innocent, then that really sucks for him. But when your attorney makes those comments, something ain't right in Whoville. So I don't know that the punishment was good and long enough. I think it should have been at least a year. I know some people say he sat out a year, but yeah, he did. But that was between he and the Texans.
Right. All right.
That
So Mel,
and the NFL.
based on what Jennifer said, Mel, how would you size up everything in terms of the summary of everything? You think about it. You started out with 6, ended up with 11, and they cut a deal at that point to avoid litigation. And I have other parts of this that we're going to add to it, but I wanted to take care of this topic first because I knew it would take a little bit more time. Thanks, Jennifer, for laying it out there. We appreciate it. Go ahead,
Thank
Mel.
you.
Well, I think obviously there's a lot that we don't know because the commissioner came out and said that, he felt that it warranted a longer suspension. Matter of fact, he wanted an indefinite suspension, and he wanted him to have to reapply in order to get it to get it reinstated. This whole thing has been bizarre to me from the beginning. as Jen was saying, you never heard one thing about Deshaun Watson that all of a sudden he requests a trade. Well, even before the trade, we talked about it before with him thinking that he had some kind of say in who the general manager was going to be. He was upset because of who the general manager was.
And Nick Casario.
And, that's why he requested a trade. I mean, who is Deshaun Watson? I mean, and then, Cleveland decided to take on Houston's problem, which I couldn't understand. I mean, we're not talking about Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, unless people are seeing something I haven't, or have seen something I haven't seen, to give up what they gave up, and then to pay him the kind of money that they paid him, and then to take on somebody else's problem. That was the Texans' problem. Cleveland didn't even have to take this problem on. And obviously, if it was one or two gals, okay, you might be able to say, all right, this, that. But 24 gals, he's got a problem. There's no question about it that Deshaun Watson has some type of problem. Now, is it only because we don't have video of what transpired between him and these women that he's not banned like Ray Rice? I mean, we're talking about sexual assault, rape, whatever you want to call it, unwanted advances. Those are violent. This is a violent crime. You're taking something against somebody's will. Somebody's saying no, but you're saying yes. This is a violent action. So is it only because we don't have the video that he's not banished from the league? What if we had video? Ray Rice, he wasn't banished. He got suspended 4 or 6 games, whatever the case may have been, or 2 games, whatever it was, until the video came out. People saw the video and they were appalled. And, he's been exiled from the league. Yeah. Is it only because we don't have video evidence that Deshaun Watson is not exiled from the league? Because, look, I got 4 daughters. And, I would be extremely upset, obviously if something like that were to happen to one of my kids. Well, these are somebody's daughters that these things have happened to. I don't care what it is, how he went about doing it. This is a very serious crime that he's alleged to have committed. So, the NFL obviously wanted a longer punishment. The PA, they felt that, him sitting out last year was punishment enough, or, they only wanted 4 games. Deshaun Watson only wanted 4 games. He's got a problem that he needs to address. And I hope during this time, during these 11 games, that he's able to address that problem and he's able to come back and be a productive citizen. Now, only because we don't have video, we're going to give him the benefit of doubt, and he's going to get a second chance. And hopefully he does something with his second chance, with his second opportunity.
All right, Steve, you've been waiting patiently on this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Mel says as usual, but I look at this, and Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, he basically said, if he wasn't a star quarterback, of course he'd be suspended longer. No, I'm just paraphrasing there, but he admitted Watson got special treatment. He tried to justify this by saying, other people wouldn't see their name in the headline like Deshaun Watson does. Well, that's because they're not making $230 million a year, and like Mel said, if it's 1 or 2 women coming forward, you kind of wonder if it's somebody's putting them up to it. But 24, I mean, and a couple of the women's depositions that were leaked out said that he actually tried to force them into something. And to me, and Watson's own actions speak volumes, because he said, he was innocent. Then when they came out with the, 6-game suspension, he appeared on the, they had a video teleconference or whatnot, and he was hanging his head and acting all, contrite. Then he agrees to a $5 million fine and 11 games, and then turns around and says he's innocent. I mean, that's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And, the fact is, if you're innocent, you're not taking a deal. You're going to fight this all the way. If it has to go to federal or Supreme Court, you're going to fight this tooth and nail. You're not going to accept, a longer suspension and the highest fine ever paid, in the NFL, which tends to lead me to believe that the NFL had a lot more evidence than they were letting on. And, the bottom line is, Cleveland knew this. I mean, they arranged his contract,
Right.
To where if he got suspended for the whole year, he wasn't going to lose hardly anything. And that $230 million was still going to be tucked away, which tells you all you kind of need to know again about the Browns and what they're doing. I just thought the entire, message that's put out by Cleveland was kind of despicable. And, for a league that's trying to attract more women, fans, this is like the absolute wrong way to do that.
No, it's fair enough. All right. Just want to let everybody know here. This is Inside the Pigskin. You can subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com, hit South Florida Tribune, and go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So, with that said, you can find us anywhere you want. Listen to us, watch us, whatever the case be. Please subscribe. We have a lot of great things in the pipeline, have a lot of good things already in there, and hope you can join us. So with that said, okay, I want to go over a couple different directions here first. I'm glad you brought up the backloaded contract, Steve. We're going to get to that in a moment. But I'm only going to ask each of you a brief hypothetical. And I repeat, a brief hypothetical. Now, Goodell hired Attorney General Peter Harvey to avoid burning a bridge with the Players Association. And we all know the NFLPA has about 1,600 members. So I'm going to just go ahead and just get an easy answer here. Mel, okay, had Harvey have gotten around to making the decision before they settled, take an estimate how many games do you think he would have gotten with Harvey alone?
I think Harvey would have dished out exactly what Goodell wanted. I think he would have received the indefinite suspension, and he would have had to apply for reinstatement and and done the counseling and all the other things that Goodell wanted him to do. I really believe that. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. I mean, Goodell appointed him. He appointed him for a reason. It would have looked bad if he would have appointed himself. That wouldn't have looked good. So I think he appointed somebody that he has, that he could pull the strings with, and he could have a conversation with, not just based on the briefs that he was given, but that he, obviously he's probably been watching the stories and he knows exactly Roger's position on this. And I think he would have done exactly what Roger would have wanted him to do.
What about you, Jennifer?
I agree with what Mel said. I mean, it's pretty succinct. Things would have been different. Things would have been a little more. I mean, I think they would have been a little more severe.
So are you saying, Jennifer, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you would have gotten a year had Peter C. Harvey made the decision versus them settling it the way they did?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Steve, what about you?
I think he would have got an indefinite suspension for at least this year.
Okay.
And, they would have overseen his evaluations and, the counseling. And that's still, Goodell kind of left that hanging, that Watson has to go through this counseling and take, responsibilities for his actions and do all of this stuff before, he's allowed to come off a suspension. So if he doesn't do that, if he digs in his heels, that suspension is going to continue.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I was about ready to bring it up. Goes to the GMTA portion of the program. Jennifer, you haven't heard of GMTA, stands for Great Minds Think Alike. So, remember that. And Steve and I and Mel have it down since you're the new person in the group. We're going
I'll
to,
get there.
yeah, we're going to ahead and give you a quiz on this, Jennifer, okay?
Okay.
So you understand what GMTA stands for. So, yeah, I definitely feel that's the case. So now on to what you said about the backloaded contract. We knew, I'll tell you why they got a backloaded contract. The Cleveland Browns are one of four teams that never been to a Super Bowl. They're the only second team in NFL history to go 0-16, and they've been anything but good. Okay, so, when you feel, and of course, being a Panther girl like you are, Jen, okay, Baker Mayfield happens to reside in your area code. We're not going to get to that tonight, just making sure that obviously Deshaun Watson replaced Baker Mayfield, which I hated to see lose job, and because of an injury.
I was surprised he came to Charlotte.
Yeah, I was. But the reality is, let's talk about the backloaded contract, Steve, okay? You talk about playing this card as well as you can to know that you're looking at about $600,000 out of your pocket for the first year, if you worst case scenario. Steve, talk about the backloaded contract a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they set it up where, if he was to get suspended for the entire year, it was going to be a minimal hit to his pay. And he has $230 million guaranteed. And for a $1 million contract on year one, that kind of tells you they expected this.
Right. Jen?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Comment on that.
I actually think because Tepper was trying really hard to get Deshaun here, right?
Right.
Like where I used to live, I lived kind of in the know. We just actually moved back to the burbs. So I was told by somebody in the know to be expecting a major blockbuster trade. So I think it was Christian to the Texans at that point. I'm really glad because don't get rid of my running back because he's my man. He's super nice. And he's really good. And I'll go on other tirades later. But Tepper spent a lot of time and money hiring the best PIs in the business to investigate Watson. Tepper wasn't going to pay Watson what the Browns were going to pay. I think the Browns ownership took the PIN reports that Tepper did to use that to their advantage. Because they're like, oh, if David Tepper is going to give him money, then we know it's safe, so we can offer him this money.
So you tell me your favorite running back is Christian McCaffrey?
Yep. We can go into that conversation later on because I have my little conspiracy theories on that, but that goes into a tirade I have.
Well, you know what? Time permitting, you'll get that opportunity. So, all right, Mel, let's talk about the backloaded contract.
The backloaded contract, I mean, that was genius of Watson, I'm not going to lie, and his people. So, I mean, that was genius. Dude's not missing any money. He still gets to go do what he wants to do. He's hanging out in North Florida, South Carolina, Georgia. Like, he's out of Texas. He's out of Houston, which is what he wanted, what he needed. I mean, he needed it away from the McNair family. That's no denial. But, yeah, it was awesome. It was an awesome part for him. It was really stupid for the Browns, but we're on the third series of the Browns being there. So, hey.
So Mel, what do you talk about the backloaded contract?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with the backloaded contract. Obviously, it was smart. They knew a decision was going to be coming down the pike. They knew that he was going to be suspended. I think the Browns would much rather pay Deshaun Watson than pay the NFL because that's where that money was going to go. Right. If Deshaun didn't get the money. I really don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with the fine. Fine a player $5 million, and I think Stephen Ross got fined $1.5 million, I think, for whatever it is that he did. Right. I don't know how much money Kraft got fined for whatever it is he did, but to fine a player $5 million, only fine an owner $1 million, $1.5 million. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, they want it to be a deterrent. I understand that, but this seems to me a little bit more than that. This seems to me that Roger Goodell, really wanted to try to stick it to Deshaun Watson. He had an axe to grind, where he wanted to come. He wanted to prove a point by fining him $5 million. Yeah, $230 million is a lot of money. $5 million doesn't seem like a whole lot of money to $230 million. but $1 million and a half certainly is not a lot of money to a billionaire, and that's what you're talking about. You're talking about a billionaire getting fined. That's like that's tip money. I mean, he stepped over that kind of money all day, every day. $5 million is $5 million. I don't care if you make $230 million, if you make $100 million, if you make $20 million. $5 million is $5 million. That's a lot of money.
Well, I'll just say this before we go on to our next subject. I still think the greatest contract that was ever negotiated was Bobby Bonilla with the New York Mets because he's collecting on it for a while. So
he's still getting paid.
Yeah, he's going to get paid for a while. That's the greatest contract. I don't want to open up another can of worms here, but when we talk about a backloaded contract and Bobby Bonilla, I have to throw that in there, and I'm leaving it at that. So therefore, all right. So we'll talk about the fact that the Texans are going to be playing against the Browns on December 3rd. I'll get more into that later, but it's just interesting how the 11 games falls into it. But again, that's something we're going to touch on later. But Steve, I want to go back to your point, okay? And you made a really good one, and now we're going to expand on it, okay? You're right. He does have to comply with therapy, with rehab. Otherwise, he could get more than he already is now. So, with that said, you would think, I don't think he's saying all the right things. Just do what he's got to do just to get through it. Nobody knows how well they're going to do under Jacoby Brissett. And, of course, we have Mel's favorite player, Josh Rosen, on the team. And if that ain't good enough, Josh Dobbs. So, no interesting to see how that plays out. But, Steve, let's talk about the conditions here a little bit more in detail about the rehab. What do you know about that whole thing? And do you think that he will be compliant with this whole thing? Or do you think he does have a few missteps along the way?
Well, I don't know the exact parameters of that, rehab, whatever you want to call it, evaluation and counseling. But by his statement that he made when the 11 games came out, it seems to me like he might dig in his heels on this because he kept saying, I'm innocent. So if he keeps saying he's innocent, he's probably not going to go into this counseling and admit he did something wrong because he's been adamant that he's done nothing wrong. So, I don't know how closely the NFL is going to watch this. I'm assuming they're going to watch it closely and get reports from whoever these counselors are. Excuse me. With that being said, it's in Watson's best interest to just throw himself into this, get it over with, and, get a blue check mark and move on and, play against the Browns.
Okay, Jennifer, give me your take on this one.
So you're right, Steve. He has been so adamant. That's part of the reason why I've defended him for so long until the lawyer made the comment. That being said, I'm also the daughter of a counselor. Everybody needs somebody to talk to. Nobody can find out what those conversations entail. It is my personal opinion that every single player and every single league, major, minor, second string, third string, whatever, should be seeing a counselor at least one day a week or once every 2 weeks. That's just my humble opinion. Do I think he'll do it? Yeah. Do I also think he keeps pleading his innocence because he really doesn't think he did anything wrong? Yes. Do I also think that he settled because he wants to play ball? Yes. Because we've also all seen guys get concussed and pass the concussion test to get back out on the field because they want to play. So I think that's why he took the settlement. It's an unpopular opinion, but that's why I think he did it. And honestly, like I said, they can't ask what is discussed in therapy. That's a HIPAA violation. I mean, even though it's not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, as long as he's seen a counselor, they're still bound by the law. They can't, unless they're going to harm someone else or harm themselves, they can't report it. You just can't.
Yeah, I think the reality of this whole situation, judging by what I'm hearing from you guys, and Mel, you'll get it in a moment, is the fact that I still think that Deshaun Watson is in denial, is what he is. I don't think he can accept the reality that he isn't. I mean, denial because he's trying to put up a good front, like Jennifer just said. He'll do anything he can to get on the field. Doesn't hurt that he had Rusty Hardin as his attorney, who can get anybody out of anything anyhow. So, but I think the word denial is really what it comes. He better get, and like Jennifer, you make a good point about HIPAA violations. You really can't dive into it other than the fact the guy showed up. So if he shows up, he's back on the field. Now we'll just see whether he maintains consistency and does show up. I think that's the intangible factor here.
Right. And it could even be a phone call.
Right. So Mel, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably there's a goal, I'm sure, that Roger Goodell would like to see accomplished. Some contrition, some acceptance, owning up to it. I think there's probably, whoever the counselor is going to be, whether it's an NFL mandated counselor or whatever, I think there's going to be a goal that has to be reached in order for him to be able to get back onto the playing field. And I don't know if that's a HIPAA violation, saying that he met the goal or he satisfied the requirement. I don't know if that's a violation or not. But like I said, he has a problem. He does need counseling. There's no question about it. He has a problem. If he doesn't feel what he did was wrong, again, 1, 2, maybe even 3. I'll give him 3. I might even give you a handful. I'll give you, but 24.
You're right.
5 handfuls. I can't do it. You got a problem. I mean, you've got a problem. Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Now I'm gonna ask you guys a hypothetical question, and I love hypothetical questions. Right? We know the number is 11, but here's the biggest intangible factor why you don't hit 17 versus 11. Okay, he was not charged twice by a grand jury. So I'm not a math major, okay, and I won't pretend to be one. But the reality is he ends up at 11, wasn't charged twice by the legal system. Do you think that may have, Jennifer, impacted the fact that he didn't get 17 and ended up 11, if for no other reason, the legal system? And then what I'm going to do, Jen, is I want to tie up the O.J. Simpson to this because it's been brought up on a few things where, and I hate to do this, but it is what it is. It's football, okay? That, he didn't get charged in L.A., but Vegas got him later, okay? But let's stay on point with what I'm saying. You got 11, okay, should have gotten 17. But again, this is where I mentioned double jeopardy, okay? Just because you go ahead and don't get charged doesn't mean you're not going to get charged in civil is what we're talking about, because you can't get nailed for double jeopardy. And that's why I brought this up at the beginning of the show, is for that reason. So, all right, Jennifer, I'll start with you. 17 if he's charged by a grand jury, or 11 because he's not?
Because he's not. Most of the girls dropped their civil lawsuits against him.
Right, but the point is, I'm talking about the actual legal process itself, Jennifer. Right. Okay, just want to make sure.
No, because he wasn't charged.
Right,
but
correct.
The NFL had to make a stand.
Right.
Because the amount of grief the NFL, because think about it, Scott, would this have even been a blip on the radar 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Right.
No, it wouldn't have been.
But here's the deal, Jen. Okay, I think he easily gets 17 if he's charged, but the fact is he wasn't charged.
He wasn't charged.
Therefore, he gets 11. But I'm glad we're having this conversation. Yeah. That's what makes it good. I easily think he gets 17, but he gets 11 because you couldn't nail anybody. Roger Goodell is not a prosecutor, okay? Right. He's just a commissioner of a league, and that's the only reason why I can do the math that 17 minus 11 is 6 that he gets to play. Go ahead, Jen.
But it's also 11, and the NFL made a big deal because they had to make a stand because look what the NFL is doing to Dan Snyder.
Right.
What's that? Nothing.
Right.
And there's literal video proof of what Dan Snyder has done to women. And he's done nothing. And there's no video proof. There's just claims. So they're going after Deshaun. And I'm just saying, just saying that. Yeah. Because it was 11 because there was no indictment on the grand jury.
Precisely my point, Jennifer. Thank you. Mel, some thoughts about that?
I think that if there's an indictment, he's on the commissioner's list and he's waiting for the outcome of the criminal proceedings. We're not even having this conversation. He's not playing if an indictment came down the pike. All this stuff got set in motion when he didn't get indicted. everybody was like, "Oh, okay, he must not have done it. Hey, let's go ahead and mortgage. Let's give up everybody and let's give them all the money and bring them on down here." But if an indictment had came down, and I understand it was 2 grand juries that, and we always say, the grand juries can indict a ham sandwich, and for whatever reason, they were unable to indict Deshaun Watson. But it wouldn't even be a matter of 11 or 17. He'd be on the commissioner's list until this case was adjudicated in the courts.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think had he been indicted, he'd have been on the exempt list, and he'd be trying to get himself a quick trial because he wouldn't play at all, as long as that case was pending.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let's go back to what everybody's alluding to. Settles 23 of the 24 cases. And obviously that to me is an admission of guilt because obviously he's trying to pay these women off in an effort to save his career. So Jennifer, okay, he's guilty by civilian reasons because he's admitting to guilt, isn't he? Because of the 23 out of the 24, or is he?
No, he wants it to go away.
Right, exactly.
That's why he's paying the money.
Right.
He's not admitting to guilt. He's just wanting it to go away. And that was the easiest way. And that's probably what he was advised to do. Because he's still claiming his innocence. So in order to do so, he had to pay the women off.
Right.
But that's the storyline. And we've heard that story before. We've heard it from actors. We've heard it from actresses, sport pro athletes of all genres.
Right.
We've heard it before. So I don't know that it's necessarily, and I hate talking like being devil's advocate here, but I don't necessarily think that's a claim to, hey, I'm guilty. Here's some money. This is more, I'm not guilty, but you're not going to shut up. Go away. Here's what you really want. Here's 100 grand. Here's 30 grand. Because none of it, I mean, honestly, like to me, it's a lot of money, but to other people, to people of that caliber with that much money, 30 grand's not much. He didn't give the women a lot of money, to my knowledge, to my recollection.
Well, I mean, you do a cost analysis. It's no different than like in the insurance business. They do a cost analysis. Okay, what is it going to cost me to fix this car versus replacing the car? Is it going to cost more to replace it, or is it going to cost more to try to fix this thing? I think for him, you look at the cost analysis. What is it going to cost me to litigate all 24 cases in court versus paying them? Because that's a lot of money that he'd have to pay out in attorney fees to defend himself, and he could lose. He could lose some of them. So if you have an opportunity to settle, then you need to go ahead and settle. But again, I think he should have settled a long time ago. The very first 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people that came out, he should have been trying to get them some money and say, hey, before other folks, jumped on the bandwagon. All of a sudden, man, that thing spread like one of them California wildfires, man. It was crazy. Women coming out the woodwork. So, that was a smart thing to do, to settle so he could get on with his life, get on with his career. The ladies could get on with their lives and go about their business, and at least feel good about the outcome, and not have to worry about testifying and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, it's the best case scenario for everybody involved, so everybody can get on with their lives and move forward.
Steve?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, because I'm sure it wasn't a question of money for the women, but when you look at it from their perspective, they're going to have to testify in court. There's going to be all kinds of, media trying to get into the courtroom, and then they're going to get dragged through the mud by his lawyers because they're going to do everything in their power to exonerate him, and they're going to turn this around on them. If you're looking at it from their perspective, they really didn't want to go to court.
Right.
That wasn't something they were looking forward to. So I think, settling from his perspective, like Mel said, I think is probably the smart thing to do. But I don't know, when you're trying to proclaim your innocence, and then you're paying off 23 women to be quiet. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a good way to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys, and you as well, Jen. To pay somebody off means you're trying to get them off your back, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily totally innocent. And Jennifer, you've been saying that the whole time, anyways. That you pay somebody off, you get back on the field. That's what he's trying to do. So I want to go back to something that we talked about earlier, and I want to reiterate on it, if I may. All right, the Ray Rice situation, where he literally did get blackballed because of the video evidence. Jennifer, you made that very clear. Greg Hardy's definitely not no choir boy either. Of course, I think
there was no video evidence with Greg Hardy, and he was blackballed.
Right, exactly. So,
and he actually called the cops first.
He what?
He's the one who called the police.
Right.
Greg Hardy called the cops first.
Right. So, all right. So let's talk about the video situation. In this particular situation, I believe that Ray Rice, to me, I don't think it was on the downside of his career anyways, but when you have a video situation, which you didn't have with Deshaun Watson, that to me is probably could have made the difference no matter how good you are. I think that if there was video, there's no question that would have impacted what was going on with Deshaun Watson, Jennifer. Video says it all. It's pretty hard to argue against that, isn't it?
It is. And I think this is where some public opinion does sway in his favor. Not a lot, but a little bit. Because one of the girls had reached out to a therapist in Las Vegas. And then the masseuse altered some of the DMs between she and the therapist to make it appear that the therapist had been a victim of Deshaun as well. The therapist had to come out and make a public statement saying that her statements had been altered and had to prove like her line of communication and say, no, these are the actual conversation. This is the conversation. Like this happened like 2-3 months after all of this started coming out. But video evidence would have helped out a lot. I don't know why any of these women did not press record on their phones because it's really easy. Like even my mom, who is technology illiterate, and I love her, knows how to press record on her cell phone. So, I mean, and I love you, Mom, but she admits it. But they could have done this. Like for the vast majority of the time, they were in control of the room. They were literally in control of Deshaun Watson's body.
Right.
And I'm not blaming them because what happened was atrocious. So please understand, I'm just trying to think of this so logically, and it's just, I don't know. Because he did naughty things. Nobody's questioning that.
Right. Yeah, well, the only thing you're lacking in the Ray Rice situation compared to Deshaun Watson, there's no video. Otherwise, who knows where this thing can.
Well, and Ray Rice, how long was he beating his fiance for?
Yeah,
and how many times did he do it in front of their kid?
The Ray Rice thing was, I think it was. I know everyone's pointing to that, but Rice knocked a woman unconscious,
right,
and then dragged her in the elevator, and nobody's saying anything remotely similar to Watson. No. I mean, yeah, if there was video, what would you see? Probably not a whole lot.
Right.
Correct.
It's not like, I know people are comparing it to Ray Rice, but I think that situation, was a lot different. It's kind of apples and oranges because his was violent. I mean, he knocked I think it was his fiance at the time. Right. He knocked her out cold, then dragged her in the elevator. I mean, that was pretty graphic.
I would say a Kareem Hunt analogy would have been a better analogy, to be honest.
The one?
Kareem Hunt.
Okay. All right. That's good. I'm glad you brought that up. Go ahead. Explain why.
Because, again, it was some random girl. No offense to the ladies, but it was a random girl. In that case, the woman has admitted that she tried to antagonize him, and he had walked out of the room. Then she hunted him down in the lobby. Because if y'all remember, that's where that video footage came from, was the hotel lobby. The reason he got cut from the Chiefs is because he lied to Andy Reid. Andy would have backed him if he had been honest. He lied. So I think that if video evidence were out there, the cream hunt analogy would have been better. That's just my personal opinion.
No, it's good. I'm glad you brought it up, Jen. All right, so Mel, let's talk about the Ray Rice situation, the video. What's your take on it?
I'm kind of like with Steve. I mean, I really think there is video evidence. I think that guys in that kind of stature, they like to look at themselves. They like to look at what's going on in their house, who's coming in and out of their house. I think there's some video footage somewhere. But like Steve, you're not going to see something like Ray Rice. You might see a little no, yeah, no. I mean, I don't know. You might a little back and forth. And, I don't know. Does no mean yes? Again, but it's 24 of them. That's where I have a problem.
Right.
2, 3, like I said, I'll give them a handful. I'll give you a handful. But 24?
Right.
That to me, you've got a problem. 24 different women. You're using Instagram or whatever to get these women over to your place. Now, do the women have any idea what's going on? I don't know. I mean, I really don't. But again, I'm not trying to. If they say it happened, then I believe it happened. That they didn't want it. They didn't want it, and he did something to them that they didn't want. I'm going to go along with that. He's an athlete. He probably thinks he's a little entitled, and he probably strong-armed a few of those women. I'm not saying he strong-armed all 24, but he might have strong-armed 10, 15. I don't know.
Okay.
But again, like I said, that the volume, like Roger Goodell said, the predatory nature of it, that's a problem. That's where you see that he has a problem, because I don't know if any of you have seen his girlfriend. He's got a beautiful girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extremely nice looking gal.
Well, the key words here are predatory behavior, and I think that's the one thing that I don't want to lose sight of, because that's why he's in the jackpot he's in anyhow. And ironically, Judge Sue L. Robinson is the one that categorized it as predatory behavior, which is why Goodell was pushing for the harsher sentence, only for it to wind down what it is. So with that said, okay, I'm going to bring on something a little bit more lighthearted. Jennifer alluded to a little bit earlier. And now I just want to talk about a little, and then 2 more things I want to get to. And then if we have time, we'll let Jennifer go ahead and rant a little bit, okay? Because she had something on her mind. But here's the thing, okay? We're talking about, the fact that he didn't play with the Texans last year for whatever reason, whether it's this incident or not. Well, first of all, why would you want to have him play if you didn't want him? He didn't want to be there anyways. You run the risk of injury. The only R to me is rust, not risk. Okay.
Right.
He didn't want to play Nick Caserio. I don't believe that players should be general managers like he seemed to think he is, and like the modern day athlete is. So, and the reality is like Mel said, the Texans got a good haul for him, and Cleveland took that problem off his hand for $230 million reasons, let alone $225 with $5 going to charity. So he didn't want to play for the Texans last year, and he got a paid year off is what he ended up getting. And remember, once upon a time, Stephen Ross of the Dolphins wanted him, but he needed all this mess to get straightened out because they weren't thrilled with Tua Tagovailoa. So there's a lot more layers here as well. So with that said, Jennifer, okay, pick it up from there. We gave you a lot to bite on.
Okay, what is the final question? I'm sorry, there was a lot there.
He did not want to play for the Texans last year anyways. So he ended up getting paid for last year. He didn't bite it in the pocketbook anyway. So
But here's the thing, when you're making that much money, you're starting quarterback. You're like a bowl winning collegiate quarterback. Who, let's face facts, Clemson, Deshaun wasn't hurting financially when he went into the NFL anyway. Let's face facts. So that being said, and I'm not accusing Clemson of doing anything, wrong by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. However, when you're making that much money and you're an athlete to that caliber, you want to play football. You want to swim. I was a competitive swimmer. I wasn't a Michael Phelps by any stretch of the imagination. I was barely Junior Olympics,
Right.
but I still wanted to swim. It was my passion. It was my drive. It was my competitive nature. When you're there, some people call it the Mamba attitude. I call it the MJ attitude. When you're there, or the Johnny Unitas attitude,
Right.
more appropriate. You want to play. You want to get out there. You want to play. You want to play through the concussions. You want to play through the BS. You want to play because you get out there. You can leave your personal drama on the side. Like, so he wanted to play, I think. So him sitting there and just raking in money, he got to go hang out with his mom and his girlfriend more.
The bottom line is he got paid to stay away.
Oh, yeah.
That's what happened. All
And
right,
that
Mel,
means there are people right now, there are lawyers probably sitting at home being paid to stay at home
right.
and not practice law.
The guy
So-
got paid to stay away, and he didn't have to be
Yeah.
bothered with Nick Casario. He didn't even have to send him a Christmas card. I don't even know what the mail is these days. Everybody emails anyways, and I don't even read that.
Yeah, I do think that he wanted to play last year, but I think at some point when you're making that much money, you don't care about the money as much as you do care about going out and doing your job, especially when you're competitive.
No, I agree. Hey, listen, everybody's competitive bones. You want to go out there and play. The reality is he got paid to stay away, and I guess the only good thing I can say about it is he didn't get any hits last year. No, you played the game, okay. What's it like to go out there and, hey, take your money? We know that obviously you got this thing hanging over your head. Not a bad year's work if you can get it. Just stay away, right, Mel? Get paid to stay away from the Texans.
I'm
Right?
sure. I only wish I could have had that type of scenario. But listen, he just signed his contract. I mean, I think he was a year, maybe 2 years into the contract that he had just signed, the extension that he had just signed. He might not even been into the extension money yet.
Yeah.
So again, and we talked about this before. I don't know who gave him the idea that he was going to have a say in who the general manager was going to be. So this must be a lot deeper than any of us know, because I still don't understand that. Nobody's ever been able to answer that question for me as to why he thought. I can understand maybe him wanting to have a little say or a little input or just be a part of the conversation of the head coach. But the general manager?
Right.
I mean, who is Deshaun Watson? I mean, this is not Peyton Manning. This is not Tom Brady. This is not Drew Brees. It's not Russell Wilson. It's not Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. He's probably been in the league 4 years, maybe. I haven't, and again, maybe I'm missing something.
McNair had told him he could.
Why would he do
McNair
that?
told him he would have a voice and who the GM was and who the coach was.
Why? Why does he need a voice?
Because McNair wanted to satisfy him. So he just gave him
what?
empty
What does he need to
promises.
satisfy him for? He just gave him a big contract. That's all he needs to do is pay him and get some people around him. That's it. That's all he has
And
to
that's
do.
why Deshaun wanted that input, because he wanted to have the people around him.
He's not LeBron James, okay? This is not LeBron James and clutch sports and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, I couldn't understand it. So the Texans for that year got what they deserved because they put themselves in that position. Now it kind of worked out because it coincided with all this other stuff that came up, and it would have been very difficult for him to play with all that baggage that he had all last year. It would have been very difficult for them to trot him out there as a starting quarterback and him to play week in and week out with all those, these allegations hanging over his head, plus possible criminal indictments and things of that nature. Have been extremely difficult for him to play. But the notion that that Deshaun Watson should have had a say in anything is ridiculous. I don't understand it, and they got what they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Steve, you know what? You know who Nick Casario is? Patriots, right? You see Jennifer and Mel. I love this exchange between these two. So why don't you jump in there a little bit, Steve, and see if you can make some sense out of all of this about the fact that I got paid to stay away.
I don't know why he had such heartburn about Casario, but I will tell you this: when he said he'd be traded, he wanted to trade. One of the teams he said he would not go to was New England. So I don't know what all that stems from. Maybe it's Bill Belichick, but Casario, everyone who's been around him says He's got a great football mind. He's a very, very straight up kind of guy. And, the way he dealt with the media all his years in New England, there was never any kind of, feeling that he was a hard person to deal with. I think Watson just didn't want Nick Caserio there. He obviously wanted somebody else. And, he dug in his heels. And I think Mel hit it on the head early in the show. He was entitled. And that's what all this stems from. He has this massive feeling of entitlement, even though he's played very well. I'm not saying he hasn't, but he hasn't done anything with the Texans. And, this feeling of entitlement, I don't know where it comes from. Jen said it came from McNair. And again, the Texans got what they deserved.
Right.
They paid him for not showing up to work.
Right.
And they paid him to stay away. And, I don't know how much money he got paid last year, but I'm sure it wasn't a small amount.
All right. Two more things I want to get to. Okay. Number one, the timing of the Texans game, December the 3rd. And I have a feeling this thing could be flex, prime time, no shortage of storylines on this. I mean, come on. We all know the NFL is a $1 billion industry, right, Jennifer? So it could have been longer. Yeah, I think if the Texans were not even on the schedule, but that's just a pure hypothetical on my part.
First of all, the Texans getting a primetime slot. They're loving this.
Oh, you know it too, man. Yeah, So here's the deal. Okay, tail of the tape. The timing of the Texans game on December 3rd, this could be flexed. Could be in prime time, no shortage of storylines. All of us people in media, Steve, we like that stuff, right? And it could have been longer if the Texans were not on the schedule. And for me, my hypothetical is I think this is going to be a flex game if it gets even more interesting. And we know that the NFL is $1 billion industry. So with that said, okay, Steve, you're waving goodbye. Okay.
No, I'm waving to the little boy.
He was cracking me up earlier because he was posing like this. I don't know if you guys saw him or not.
He looked like he was looking into the camera. So
Kenzo, you're so cute. No matter how many. So we got to retitle this thing. Candy's gonna do it.
I looked like he was looking into the camera, so I was just waving hello to him.
He's adorable. All right, Kenzo, you want to say anything about this? All right, Steve, what's your take about us being media guys like we have? Is this by design that he's coming back for the Texans, and that's why Goodell was willing to settle at 11? No, and by the way, you're only playing at Houston so that you can get booed louder than Philadelphia fans and boo anybody on the planet, even Santa Claus. So, all right, Steve,
I don't put anything past the NFL. I think this was completely by design that they agreed to 11 games. So, again, the NFL is all about events. They've made everything into an event. This is going to be a primetime event.
Right.
Because Deshaun Watson's going back to Houston. His first game back, he's going to be with the Cleveland Browns, and he's going to face his old team.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be crazy there.
Yeah, so there you go, Attorney General Peter C. Harvey. Okay, you could have gotten a year. Goodell settled for 11. You get to go out there to go to Houston. Okay, I used to like covering games at the Astrodome, not where they're at. Okay, but that's another day for another time. So there you go, folks. The stage is set. Okay, Deshaun Watson is going back to Houston in prime time. Take it to the bank, flex it, Jennifer. Okay, no matter what McNails are involved. Okay. And that's why you have 11. Now, are we really all out of our rocker here? Probably a little bit. But understand, Jennifer, you're the newer person into the media. Not that although you have a ton of common sense anyways. But there's theater, okay? Everybody talks about baseball not having enough theater, but the NFL ain't going to be accused of that. All right, so Jennifer, let's talk about Deshaun Watson going back to Houston. How loud will it be? How loud will it be? Okay, will it be louder than Bristol, Tennessee, with the old cars out there with all those boos? Go ahead, Jen.
Here's my question.
Sure.
This literally just hit me.
Sure.
Is Deshaun going to get paid on the back end too for that being his first game?
I don't know.
More money?
I don't know.
Can the NFL give him more money if that game is moved to not the Browns, but can the NFL?
All right, Steve, what do you think? Take a crack at this one.
You said, can the NFL give him more money?
Or
Yeah,
Mel, you think?
because
No.
that'll be people watch it.
No, it's just more money for the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't sure.
That's what
okay.
the NFL is all about.
Yeah. Come on, Jennifer. I got news for you. We're breaking you in, young lady. This is
Sorry,
$1 billion
that
industry.
just hit me.
That's
I was like,
okay.
there's got to be. That's not just. My uncle was a cop. He taught me at a very young age not to believe in coincidences. So, and I got caught up in my own thought process there. Do I think it's going to be flexed? Yes, I do think it'll be flexed. Do I think it'll be a major moneymaker? Yes, absolutely. I think it'll be a major moneymaker. And no, I don't think it was a coincidence at all.
All right, so I'm going to go back to what I said before I turn over to Mel. Okay, if the Texans aren't on the schedule, he gets 17. I don't even care. And you know what? I encourage everybody out there to disagree with me, but that's okay. South Florida Tribune, Gmail.
I don't know that he gets 17 because it goes back to your question earlier. But the NFL had to make a stand.
Right. Well, don't worry, Jennifer. You're leading.
I mean, there's so many times that they didn't make a stand.
Well, Jen, you're leading to my next point. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to make sure you grill you on the GMTA part a little while. But yeah, no, I'm just kidding with you. Okay, you know that.
No, you're fine.
But the reality is he got 11. So no matter what I want to say, what Mel's going to say, you're going to say, see, it doesn't make any difference. But the reality is this is going to be incredible theater. All right, Mel, what's your take about Deshaun Watson going back to Houston? We know the reception isn't going to be very good. We know that LeBron James, when he went back to Cleveland the first time around, wasn't good. And a lot of star players, when they go back to certain places, don't get treated well. So what do you think, Mel?
So what, that's the 12th game or the 13th game or whatever? That's the actual game he comes back?
Yeah, the first game he comes back on December 3rd. After
I can't even say he'll play. I don't think they said anything about the 6 week suspension. They mentioned they could come back in 4 weeks and start practicing or something like that. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about him being able to come back early and start coming back with the team and practice and everything. Everything that I've heard is that he has to really satisfy whatever conditions of the suspension before he's able. It's almost like he still has to reapply. It's a set time, but there's certain things that he has to get accomplished and get done during that period of time in order for him to come back.
Well,
I'm sure that he'll play in that game.
As I understand it, okay, and Steve, you probably correct me on this if I'm wrong. I believe he's allowed back into the building in October, and he can start practicing in November, and he'd be able to play in that game against Houston. That's as I understand it, and read up on it later. So we'll see how. Again, this is the last time we're going to talk about it. We're just trying to bring the topic tonight to the forefront here. That his first game that he's eligible back as against the Texans sets the stage for all the old theater in the NFL. So as I understand it, by
that time in the schedule, depending on what those guys' records are at that particular time, I don't know how good the Texans are going to be, how good Cleveland's going to be at that particular time. It may or may not get flexed because there might be some other compelling matchups that are going to have some playoff implications that may be more intriguing for us to watch. Because this is really about one person. And a team,
right?
One person leaving the team, so I can't say that it would be a flex game. Would some people be interested in it? I'm sure, but there might be some other ball games that might be a heck of a lot more interesting because they have some serious playoff implications.
Okay, well, as I understand it, Google says week 4. So, again, that's one of those kind of things we'll play out. But the one thing I can honestly say about it, and you make a good point, though, Mel, okay, let's just say that the Browns are 4-7 at that point. You're right. That's not going to get flexed. If anything, you might have the 4 o'clock time slot, 4:30, and then it becomes irrelevant. But the one thing we could probably all agree on is there won't be any shortage of storylines nevertheless. So, Steve, any thoughts about that before we move on to the
I just think with all the drama surrounding Watson, his first game back against his old team, I don't think the records are even going to play into it.
Right.
I think that, like I said, the NFL loves making events out of everything.
Right.
And regardless of what the team's records are, I think that's going to be a primetime game.
I do too.
Yeah, but I think that's something they want to get behind them, though, too. I don't really think they want to shine a whole lot of light on that because then you're bringing it right back up. For 11 weeks, we haven't talked about it. It hasn't even been a topic of conversation. Now, all of a sudden, because he's eligible to come back, we're going to bring it up and stir up all these old emotions and feelings, about this particular situation. I think they just want this to kind of come and go and keep it moving and shine a light on it.
I just go back to when Tom Brady was suspended over air. When he came back, that was against Cleveland, and they made that the focus game that week.
Yeah, I think that's much different. I mean, there was
Goodell was just trying to satisfy people with that one because the NFL didn't do enough with the cheating scandal. So they were trying to do enough with Deflategate, which was stupid and just the idiocracy there. Like, yeah, I actually kind of felt bad for Tom on that one.
Well, and the other thing I'll mention, and I have one more thing I want to get to, and that's this, okay? When Deshaun Watson was not charged, okay, look how many teams jumped into the bidding war to get his services. So that's the thing that people have to understand. Wasn't charged, all of a sudden the legal stuff is, let's see who he's going to go. And the only one that benefited with the whole thing was us here in the news media because we had a lot of good content to talk about. So
I remember Cleveland was out of the race.
Right, exactly.
He had told Cleveland no, and it was between the Panthers, I think, and
Saints, I believe.
The Falcons, if I'm not mistaken, or
and them too. Yeah.
It was the Panthers, the Falcons, Miami, and the Saints were kind of in talks.
Okay.
The Saints had just
Saints
started talking to him.
Yeah, the Saints were like at the very end.
Okay.
But I think the Saints did the smart thing in sticking with Jameis, but that's just me. I like Jameis.
Yeah, why take on this problem, man? There's already enough distractions we have to deal with throughout the course of the season. Why take on this problem?
I've got a problematic quarterback I want to keep. I'm just saying.
All right. So now that we brought all this to the forefront, okay, and I'm going to go to each and every one of you. And I think that the NFL should come up with some sort of a consistent policy called future classification dealing with sexual assault, domestic violence, and women offenses. I think that the minimum should be at least a 1-year offense minimum, because if you're going to send the right message, you need to start sending new precedents. Okay. So you know what, Jennifer, I'm going to wait for you to comment last on this. So Steve, why don't you give me your take on that?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing the NFL's been lacking for several years is there's no consistency in anything that they do. I think Park Avenue has got their head up their fourth point of contact, as we used to say in the airborne. So I don't know. I mean, could they ever agree to a uniform policy and stick to it? I tend to doubt it.
Okay, fair enough. What about you, Mel?
It's something obviously that they would have to come to agreement with, I think, with the PA. But I think it would go a long way if they were able to do that. Right now, women are feeling a certain kind of way in this country,
right?
Because of the things that have been going on, that they're not feeling. It seems like I think they feel like they've lost a lot of their freedoms, and I think it will go a long ways if the NFL would take a hard line on it. I don't care if it's a punch, if it's a slap, if it's a push, if it's rape. You got to take a hard line on it, and that's it. And let the players know, hey, this is what it's going to be, regardless of. I mean, if you just you yell at your wife and the police come out there, this is what it's going to be.
Right.
And I think they need to take a hard stance on that, because at some point in time, something's going to happen and it's going to be too late.
Right.
Because that's what's going to happen, because you're empowering these men right now by not doing anything, by not taking a hard stance. And I know, you brought up Greg Hardy, there's a lot of layers to that deal there. I mean, with the lady not showing up, there's a lot of different things, whether she was paid off, there's a lot of different things, layers there. And we, every year we hear about it, there's something going on, where some type of domestic dispute or domestic violence with a player and their spouse or significant other or whatever the case may be, and they just kind of try to sweep it under the rug. They definitely need to take a hard line stance, because there's going to come a time where something bad could possibly happen, and you have an opportunity to get in front of it right now before something bad happens.
All right. All I'll say is I agree that they should have a hardline, consistent policy. But you know what? I'm giving Jennifer the last word on this one. Go ahead, Jen.
They need to make this a hardline policy for owners, front office, players, all the same. And here's my biggest issue. Rape is the hardest thing for prosecutors to win. Every single prosecutor will tell you that. With Greg Hardy, I happen to know people who knew both Greg and the young lady. And I asked him, I said, do you know, who do you think is telling the truth? And I have never seen this individual look so contrite in my entire life. And trust me, if y'all know Vatek fans, you know the look I'm talking about. He looked so contrite. He said, they both lie. I don't know who's telling the truth. I said, okay. That being said, you've got Jerry Jones, who got busted earlier this year for his front office peeping in on the cowgirl, the
Cheerleaders.
the cheerleaders. Thank you. Mm-hmm. We've got Dan Snyder. We have those are the two most, but we've
Robert Kraft.
Robert Kraft. But Robert Kraft owned it, and it wasn't on the cheerleaders.
He had a liaison down in that little
yeah. I mean, there was no way he could deny it. There was video.
It had something to do with human trafficking or sex trafficking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He got off easy, so he needs.
They hadn't even punished him yet that I know of.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the thing, like, I'll say this: Jerry Richardson did a couple of like skeezy things, but he didn't deal with the players doing anything skeezy. He sat Hardy's butt. He sat Ray Caruth. As soon as like Fred Lane, when Fred Lane was killed, that was it. Yeah, there needs to be a hard and fast line, and it sucks because women lie. Some women will lie. Let's not ignore that fact.
Okay.
24 though.
24.
Like I said, I'll give you a handful.
I think there's some truth to some of these women. I think some of these women are maybe not telling the truth, to be honest with you. But I think the vast majority of them are telling the truth. I do think there's a couple that are not.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
But I think the vast majority are telling the truth. But yeah, there needs to be a hard line, but it needs to be across the board. Because I'm sorry, but a cheerleader is also a team member, and she needs to be able to change in a locker room.
I totally agree with you. I know you do.
I do, and I appreciate that.
So as I'm understanding what we're talking about, this is a complete unanimous decision that there should be it should be uniform and a fine line all the way across, consistency everywhere.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Consistency is the key. The punishment has to be the same across the board.
Right.
Just because a guy's a star quarterback doesn't mean his sentence is less than a practice squad defensive back.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, when Darren Waller is suspended in 2017 for a substance abuse issue for an entire season to this.
Right. No, I'm with you. So I'm glad that we can really agree that there should be a uniform policy across the board, especially when you're trying to protect women, all the way across. And that's really the whole idea of the question, is making sure everything is consistent. Okay. It isn't 6 games one time, isn't 11. It should be 17, no matter what, and everybody accountable, from players to owners or whatnot. And that's where we're going. So with that said, Jennifer, you had one thing you wanted to mention earlier, so we'll create a little time there, and then we'll call it a night. So what do you want to mention? You had something you wanted to talk about tonight?
I don't remember. I know that Candy's coming on 3 Chicks in a Pod Tuesday night, so check us out.
Okay. Well, you know what? Stay tuned for 3 Chicks in a Pod. So with that said, Jennifer Lewis, good first act with you tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
To find out about Mel, okay? This guy here, and we go back away. when he sticks his ground to something, he's mentioning something 4 or 5 times. I can see you with 5, but I see you this and that. My
I
man
can tell
Mel
that.
carries a rock, and he is consistent all the way. Right,
Yes.
Steve? We got to give Jennifer the new person on the block about my man Mel. He sticks to his ground.
Mel, yeah, he sticks to his guns. He shoots straight from the hip. So
Yeah, he does.
I got 4 daughters, man. So
yeah, well,
This is a tough, this is a tough topic.
Jennifer,
Yeah.
you're going to learn that out, young lady, that my guys here, there's a little bit more gray on this show than anyone that you're probably accustomed to going on. So we got a little bit of wear and tear on our bodies. I'm not advertising it, but it is what it is. But
It's okay, more than my husband, and he has gray hair too. It's all good.
that's why I shaved the sides of my head, so it's skin
I
color.
kind of covered
And
up.
Steve,
with my
I'm loving your
haircut.
man bun too.
Yeah. It's my Viking haircut. So
Well, hey, listen, I always have a hat of the day. I can't wait to get a sponsor for somebody that wants to go ahead and advertise a hat of the show, because I'm working on that one too. Give me a little time. We'll see where that one comes from. But listen, I know we spend a lot of time in the subject, but there are times though when you come up with subjects, folks, that command a lot of time, and you have to be thorough considering the sensitivity of this nature. We're just so glad that Jennifer Lewis was willing to spend some of her night to go ahead and talk about it. Let me go over some company stuff here real quick. Everybody have a chance to get a hold of themselves. But folks, please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. So, guys and gal, okay, Jennifer.
It's fine. I don't get offended by that.
Oh, no, I'm just saying. Hey, listen, we once had 3 men and a baby. Now this is really cool here. 3 men, a
I'm
gal.
loving it.
Hey, but Jennifer, your first act certainly earns you plenty of opportunities to crack this club. I think, Steve, how do you think Jennifer did tonight?
Oh, she's great.
Okay.
We should have her on more often.
Oh, we're gonna. Don't worry, Jennifer. Well, we'll make that happen. So, Jennifer, Mel, give Jennifer your report card about what we saw for Jennifer Lewis tonight.
Yeah, you did an outstanding job. Really enjoyed having you and look forward to having you on more.
All right. With that said, Mel, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you and all the good things that you represent?
Catch me on all the social media at Mel Farr Jr. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Mel Farr Jr. You can find out and follow what we have going on for the youth in Detroit and also here in Atlanta at melfar.org.
And how can we get a hold of you, Kenzo? Oh, well, I guess he doesn't really know yet. But, TBD on him. All right, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, as says right down here, I'm on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. Everything else, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Steve Balustrade.
All right. Well, I said my piece anyways, but you know what? For whatever it's worth, okay, please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com. Also go out there and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. And I also want to a special shout out to Candy Eveling, who does an unbelievable job with the website. She fills in as a broadcaster from time to time when we need her. And I know her and Jennifer are becoming fast friends, really good. And, without Candy, this platform really wouldn't be anywhere it's at. So, Candy, shout out to you as well. So, again, I gave you all the information. She does an unbelievable job with the broadcast side, getting the content up. And what can I say? You want to talk about the real MVP, Candy Eveling? We just are just happy to be a part of it. Thanks to the contribution. So I'll tell you right now, I'm proud of each and every one of you tonight for tackling a very tough subject. And yes, pun intended, because we're talking tackling with football. Okay. So with that said, on behalf of Mel Farr Jr., Jennifer Lewis, the professional fan, okay, and Steve Ballesteri, my partner in crime in a lot of different ways, how I drag him into every situation I'm on the planet. He stands there and handles it like a true pro that he really is. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. Inside the Pigskin is back, and we're going to have a lot of great gridiron content all year. So you take care, everybody, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next episode. Great job, my crew. I'm so proud of every last one of you. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
And we're ready for some football.